right, buddy. Thank you so much for coming out today, man. I really appreciate you taking
You're
the time,
welcome.
and I'm excited to talk to you, especially about Jiu Jitsu, as I have recently dove into it head first, and I'm trying to become an expert as you are.
Well, I'm not an expert yet, but we're getting there slowly.
What belt level are you, though?
Brownie.
How long you been training for, though?
It'll be 10 years this November.
I mean, 10 years is a long time.
It's crazy.
You know, I was thinking last night, when somebody jumps into jiu-jitsu, it's a very intellectual sport. You have to be able to problem solve and work through different situations. Now, if you look at somebody, let's say someone who has photographic memory or the ability to really memorize things, why is it that somebody who is that smart and that capable still cannot progress in jiu-jitsu that quick just from memorizing the technique? I mean, if you think about it on an intellectual level, if I could just memorize all the techniques, if I know if I do this and this, I can pass somebody's guard, right? Or if I do this and this.
Gotcha.
Why is it, though, that even if somebody, if they can memorize every single move, like they just study for a week, let's say, someone who's super smart, super high IQ, they still will not be able to just jump in and start competing against somebody at a high level? Why is that?
I think one of the reasons is because in real life scenarios, nothing goes according to plan. Everything is, there's so many different things that could happen, and you have to be able to adapt. And you might be drilling a technique 100 times, and if you're not drilling with resistance at one point, right, the technique is not always going to look as beautiful in real life as it does in drilling. So in drilling, there's resistance coming from different things, different aspects, and then you have your fatigue coming in.
What do you mean by drilling?
So putting in the reps. So we're going to practice butterfly sweep.
Drilling with a human, though.
Exactly.
Is what you mean.
So you practice, the coaches show you the technique, you break off into couples or into groups, and then you start drilling the technique, right? 2 and 2, for example. So I go 2 times, you go 2 times, and then we just keep going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, just putting in reps, right? Repetition, 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 just to ingrain that motor pattern into the brain, into the CNS. But then when you start grappling, it's not going to be all fine and dandy and beautiful, right? It's not always going to flow beautifully. But the more repetitions you put into it, the more beautiful it will be.
What do you think causes that, though, as far as somebody who's able to study it and not necessarily be able to do it right away? Because I understand, like, the drills add a lot of value to it and being able to get that repetition in. But how much of a difference is it when you are when you're drilling or even rolling, as it's called, right? Getting
Correct.
in the session, sparring,
yeah.
rolling with different people. It's got to make a huge difference just when you're grappling with different people at different sizes, shapes, speed. And that has to affect every single technique that you're trying to implement. There's
so many factors, like I just said, there's so many factors coming into it. And then at one point, your fatigue is going to play a role into that. If you're sweaty, you're slipping more. If there's sweat on the mat, your feet are slipping more. So you're not posting the same way you were posting when you were drilling. So it's just so many... I mean, and they might have learned the technique from somebody else, and they learned it with this modification. And they've done it so many times that that's just how they're used to doing it. So when you're grappling against them, when you're sparring, they're coming at you in a different way than you learned your opponent to come at you in practice with your original partner.
Yeah. Let's say for just these purposes, let's say there's 10,000 techniques. Right? Let's just say 10,000 different
let's
techniques.
say they break down jiu-jitsu and there's 10,000 total moves.
Right.
Okay.
So with that 10,000, even though it's 10,000 moves, realistically, because of all these factors, those 10,000 techniques can literally turn into like 10 million.
Absolutely.
Because of the fact that one technique, I might be able to do a sweep on one guy who's proportionate to my length, but the second he has 20 pounds on me, that sweep may not work.
Or if his foot is 6 inches more to the left, then that changes everything.
Or if his technique is better.
Correct.
Or, right? How much of a factor does it play for somebody who's been training in jiu-jitsu for an extended period of time, but they're starting to get older? How much does age affect somebody who's training? And also, how much does weight play a role? So if I'm going up against someone who's equal to my technique, but they have 30 pounds on me, how much of an advantage would that give that person with the equal technique?
It's going to be a significant advantage. Now, you also have to consider training age, right? So, for example, you look at pro sports, right? What's the age of the main athletes, right? Because it comes to a point where your age starts to influence the way that you could perform, right? So it could be NFL, it could be baseball, it could be basketball. after what, like, in your 30s, mid 40s, that's when they start talking about retirement, because again, it's your training age. You've already reached the level of maximal physical potential, and after that point, you're making this curve up with gains. When you barely start, these gains are crazy, and then as you progress in training age, it starts to flatten a little bit, because you've learned everything that there is to learn, let's say like the basics. And then after that, you're just refining movements. The same thing happens with the pros. So it gets to the point where the more you train, the less you're going to start to learn, and the more you have to mix and play with different aspects of the sport, and then eventually your performance starts going down. The same with lifting, right? You can't lift.
I was about to say that.
Because somebody who's got zero training age could start lifting, and let's say they've never deadlifted before, and then I don't know, 5 years into lifting, now they're deadlifting their body weight, and then 5 years later, so they made an increase of 0 to 180 pounds. And then in the next 5 years, they're not gonna be able to they might be able to double their deadlift, but as they go, their lifts are, the gains are gonna be smaller and smaller and smaller.
It's that plateau.
Yeah, until eventually, because of their training age and their maximal physical potential, how much they prepared, how much they had a baseline set up, they're gonna hit a certain threshold, and then they start coming off of it, and that's just natural. It's just the way the body works.
And right now, you train at 10th Planet Jiu Jitsu, but you also trained at other schools as well, right?
No, I've only trained at 10th Planet. But
you told me that you did gi.
Well, I've trained. Okay, so I never trained in the gi. I have a gi, and maybe playing around, we would train, and then there was a couple of competitions, little local ones back in El Paso, Texas, where
and you did
I signed up for no gi and the gi division.
Did you win the gi?
No. I took third place in one of them.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And it makes me think about somebody who is, because, there's a lot of people out there who want to start a martial art. They want to jump into it. And being at, how long have you been at 10 Planet? You said 10 years?
10 years.
10 years. How long have you been working at 10 Planet?
Officially about 2 months, so 8 weeks.
2 months?
At 10th Planet Spring Valley.
But you worked at another one?
I helped my cousin out a little bit back in 2013 when he took over the 10th Planet El Paso gym.
And you've probably seen a lot of people coming into 10th Planet and a lot of people leaving.
Absolutely.
Right? What do you think causes people to quit a martial arts? Because it's across the board. I mean, every place that I went to, people will start and people will quit. And then you have the people who stick with it. What separates the dudes or the girls, whatever, who start it and stick with it in comparison to the ones who start and quit? And usually it's early in the game, right?
Yes, I agree. I don't know who put this out, but I think most blue belts, I think it's once you get to blue belt, a lot of the guys fall off, once they hit that blue belt level.
Once they hit blue belt.
It's weird. I don't know. It's like, okay, like I got here and maybe it's, this took so much work, or to some, it's because you also have, this is what a lot of people don't understand, and it took me a while to comprehend, is you have the competitors and you have the hobbyists. So you have guys, you have people that have lives, families, full-time jobs, and this is just a hobby to them. So it'll obviously take them longer to progress versus a competitor that might be working full-time, that might be working part-time, or that's just a full-time competitor and they're training 2 times a day, 5 days a week for, I don't know, a total of 3 hours a day. So I know it really just depends. It's not for everybody. Definitely, it definitely puts you in a very uncomfortable situation at first. It's a contact sport, so you're grabbing somebody. They're on top of you. You're sweaty. A lot of people also have an ego issue, so
I think that's a big one.
They're not used to being tapped out. Right? To them, it's like I literally just have to acknowledge that you're better than me at this, and I have to tap. And a lot of people, they just can't deal with that. And like I've met a lot of people who are just not used to that.
And that makes me also think about somebody who's coming in for the first time. When you first said blue belt, that makes me think, is it possible that, if you take any blue belt from 10 Planet Jiu Jitsu, I guarantee that person's going to be able to choke out any dude who doesn't have any training.
Absolutely.
Like the blue belts are really, really solid. I mean, I was super impressed. I probably trained at, realistically trained at 2 jiu-jitsu places, but I've been at other jiu-jitsu places to come in for a free class, or one of my friends go to that school or something like that. And there's 2 schools that stood out. So Hey Diago's Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in LA, their blue belts were unbelievable.
Crazy.
They were amazing. And the blue belts at 10 Planet.
Gotcha.
Like, I was rolling with a few of the guys, and I thought for sure they were purple belts. I'm like, it's a purple belt.
Yeah.
It's like, holy cow, no, it's a blue belt.
Yeah.
So you think it could be possible that they get to the blue belt level? It was a lot of work, like you said, and they go, you know what? I know enough within the sport that if somebody tries something, I could successfully defend myself or my friends or my family, and I know enough. Or is it, you think they just get maybe wear and tear? Because it is very physically demanding. Like,
it is.
know, you're recovering from ribs, right?
Correct.
I got bruised ribs from competing last weekend. Yeah, my ankle hurts because I messed something up there. Or if somebody, their ego gets in the way, maybe they don't tap when they're supposed to. Do you think that plays a role? Or do you think a lot of it can also be when somebody first starts out and they just don't get past, like what I tell people, because I'm trying to get a bunch of my buddies to come down and train at 10 Planet.
Nice.
One of my buddies, I said, you know, if you're going to sign up, do not quit until you start tapping people out. When you start tapping people out, if you want to quit, then quit. But at least get past, because you are going to get tapped out a bunch of times.
Correct.
You know?
It goes with people like they tell me like when they just start, and it's like, dude, like I feel helpless, like and that's how it feels when you start, because you know somebody who's got a month of training ahead of you and you just started, they're gonna be all over you. But white belt is generally, you know, just you're playing the survival game. And you're just trying to survive, and you're trying to figure they're pretty much throwing you into the water and you don't know how to swim, and you're just trying to float. You're just trying to be able to breathe. That's really how white belt level is.
Well, man, when I first started submitting people, that's when I became addicted. Like, it's so much fun,
dude. Got there really quick.
Well, because I also was a black belt in Marine Corps martial arts.
Oh, gotcha.
So I did a lot of grappling within the Marine Corps martial arts, but it's different. So in Marine Corps martial arts, they do grappling, but it's not to the level of Jiu Jitsu. So
combatives, right? Is that what they call? I know the Army uses combatives. But.
Yeah, I mean, we do. So, for example, each belt level has a certain syllabus. In order to get that belt in Marine Corps martial arts, you have to be able to demonstrate that you can perform every single exercise that's required in order to get that belt. So somebody could be, let's say they graduate boot camp, they get their tan belt, which would be equivalent to a white belt, and 2 months later they can have their gray. If they work with somebody, they learn the techniques and they can demonstrate them. Once they demonstrate them, unless it's changed since I was there, so you can get a gray really fast. I got my black belt in 9 months.
Jesus.
You know, and all I did was I trained every day. So me and one of my good buddies, but you think about it, it's different than the level of jiu-jitsu or these other ones as well, any of the mixed martial arts, because they're trying to get them to a level where if they are in a confrontation with another human being, they're going to have the advantage.
Got you.
Right? So we want to get them that information as quickly as possible, get them drilling, get them working on it, and also building their confidence by giving them these belts and these promotions, also putting them in a position to instruct and teach other people. So the quality isn't as good, but the quantity is much larger. Does that make sense? And that plays a higher value in a combat situation.
Because it's life and death situation.
Yeah,
right?
so,
Jiu-Jitsu, it's mainly sport, but Marine Corps is obviously.
But they keep training. I mean, you're going to train the whole time you're in, but it's also like an ego boost. You get your black belt. Now you're wanting to train more. You want to show people.
Absolutely.
And you still, I mean, so I got it really fast when I got my black belt, and it's because me and one of my good buddies. This guy's a giant. I mean, you take me and scale me up on a computer and add a little bit more muscle, that's this guy. So he was like 240 pounds, about 5 inches taller than me, all muscle, super great dude. And him and I, we seeked out this black belt instructor trainer. So an instructor trainer can make instructors in the Marine Corps, yeah. And we were on what's called a FAP, Fleet Marine Assistant Program. It's when you're going to get out of the Marine Corps. If you had a combat MOS or MOS that's very challenging, then what they do is they offer you a relaxed job as a form of transitioning back into the civilian world. So I was a barracks manager because I was originally going to get out. Then I signed back up to be a drill instructor. He got out, and he was the, I forget the term for it, but basically he did all the drug testing. So we had tons of free time on our hand. So we would find this guy. He would show us a new technique every day, and then me and my buddy would fight for the next 5 hours. And then the next day we would find this guy, and we did that every single day, and we progressed pretty fast. And then my unit saw that I was really passionate about it, and they sent me to the instructor course. So, but
that's awesome.
At that level, I was like a really good white belt. You know what I mean?
Gotcha.
In jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, because that directly spilled over into jiu-jitsu because you already have the competitive aspect to it. You already know what it feels like to have somebody else's weight on you, their knee on you, on your stomach, on your face, on your ribs, and you're actively searching for a position of advantage. So you already had that. It's not like you're waiting to see what they're going to do. It's like I kind of have an idea of what he's going to try to do.
Mm-hmm.
So if he's on top of me, I know I need to get him off of me.
Yeah.
Right?
Keep the elbows tight. Keep the knees in.
Exactly.
Right? What are some things that, okay, legitimately, this is a question I care about. Yeah.
No, absolutely. Ask me anything.
The audience is going to care, I'm sure, as well, those that care about jiu-jitsu, martial arts. But I want to get better faster. I mean, I'm not going to... But I also learned from being in the Marine Corps, what we were talking about earlier, to be humble, right? To not have that ego. Because when I was training in the Marine Corps, I've popped both elbows, both shoulders, both knees, and that was because I had that ego. I didn't want to tap.
Was it from... Okay, so this was from a submission they had, and you didn't want to tap.
Yeah, and I didn't tap. Yeah. It actually, my shoulder popped so bad from, what's this one? That's the Americana. The Americana, yeah. So my buddy had me in the Americana, and he's like, tap, motherfucker. And I said, fuck you, right? We're like yelling back and forth, and it just popped super loud.
Don't tap.
Yeah. So
tap.
Since, like, I mean, for example, when we trained, what was this, Friday? I think I didn't, because I didn't go Saturday. I had to go to LA.
Yeah, it was Friday.
Friday, I only tapped one person once, and we were also grappling at a very easy level because I told everyone since my ribs were bruised, I said, hey, man, 30% if you don't mind. So we were rolling, but I was still tapped that day maybe 15 times.
Really?
Dude, yeah, because I couldn't move the right way because of my ribs, so I'm trying to get out of position.
You're compensating and you're trying to,
But anytime they get in a position, if they get me in, for example, the basic arm bar where you have the legs going over, right? And they're going for... Once I feel my arm bending... I'm pretty much tapping. I mean, if it's a competition, you want to try to roll out of it, you do that Hail Mary, fine.
Correct.
You know what I mean? But that's one thing that I love so much about jiu-jitsu, too, is you can train every single day. There is wear and tear, but if you're humble, it's not like sparring in boxing. You know what I mean? When you're getting punched in the head constantly.
Broken nose.
Yeah. I mean, if you're humble in jiu-jitsu, and just understand there's always someone better.
Absolutely.
You know?
Yeah.
I mean, there's always...
And one day, and you could have that partner, because this happened to me, where... I started with a group of guys who had never trained, and you kind of start to see like who's going to be, who's at your level and who you're progressing with. Mm-hmm. And then the coach would put you guys together. And so it's like this constant battle back and forth to see. And then, I tapped him out two times today, and then, he got me 3 tomorrow. Mm-hmm. And then the next time, nobody tapped out. And then whatever. So it's just like this back and forth. And this guy that I know, like, we still go back and forth hard, and we've both been training for the exact same time frame.
And what are certain things, that was a question I was going to ask, my ADD kicked in and went in a different direction. What are certain things, if you were to give somebody advice on, like, if you want to accelerate faster, and let's take out the train every day thing, right? Because some people, based on their schedule, for example, I go in every chance I get.
Correct.
Right? And I'm busy, sometimes I can't make it, and I'm not going out to the bars, I'm literally working, all night. That's why I can't get in there. And there's a lot of people that are like that. So based on how many days you're able to train each day, what are certain things that you might be able to think of to say, hey, if you want to get better, faster, I recommend doing this maybe at home. So like, for example, stretching, right? Or something. What are certain things that would give you a little bit more of an edge?
So there's a few things you can do. Just going back a little bit to what you were telling me about the ego thing and tapping. In training, tap, right? And tap often, because you don't want to injure yourself. Because if you injure yourself, well, guess what? You can't train, and not only can you not train, but now you're one less training partner for everybody else that's there trying to train. So that one pro fighter who's trying to get ready for camp, and he needs a sparring partner that's, let's say, your frame and your size, he needs you there. So, I mean, and I've known people that have this ego too, and they don't want to tap, and like I've popped their ankles, I've popped their elbows, their knees, and it's because like I literally took it to the edge, and they're still not going, and I just go that extra 2%, and then now he's got a torn LCL.
He didn't tap.
So tap, like screw it. Like if he got you, whatever. Next time you already know, at what level, or at what end of the spectrum you can hold off on. A choke is different, right? They're gonna put you to sleep. Yeah. But your joints, dude, you got to take care of the joints.
Have you ever been put to sleep?
I haven't.
I have.
Have you really? I've been really close. Yeah.
I was rolling with my brother, and so he hasn't trained anything outside of the Marine Corps, so I would just teach him different things that I was learning. And this one guy, somehow I don't know what I was doing, but I got my foot in front of his face, and he pushed into me, and it popped my knee. Right? I wasn't flexible enough at the time. And then somehow my brother got in that same position, and I didn't want to push into him because I didn't want to do, because he's not flexible at all. So I didn't want him to get his knee popped. So when I moved back, I don't know what he had in, but when I moved back, it cinched it super tight, and I was out. Like
that
instantly.
quick.
It was that quick. Yeah, because I didn't feel it. I was just like, out. And I woke up, and he's laughing at me. He's like, I put you to sleep, bitch. You know? And I'm sitting there, and I couldn't even tell what was going on.
No,
I'm looking around like, where the hell am I?
Yeah, people, they wake up, and they have no idea what happened. It's kind of funny.
It's confusing. It throws you off. But, I mean, I was choked out in the Marine Corps, too,
hilarious.
just from, working with the other Marines, and it's like, oh, let's see what it's like to get choked out, and it's stupid stuff, you know?
I mean, you'll be fine. I was reading this article recently. They're looking into the long-term effects of choking out to see if it's like really bad for the brain. I don't remember like what the conclusion was in the article, but it's like they're looking into it now.
I'm sure if you're getting choked out constantly, yeah. But
it depends on the length too, because you could die. Like if you hold on long enough, obviously you're preventing enough blood to the brain, and that definitely
people usually
could
let
damage
go
you.
once someone goes to sleep, though. Yeah, and there's been times, talking about people not tapping, there's been times, though, where I put somebody in a technique, and I knew I had them, and they weren't tapping, I just let go.
Yeah, that's what I do in general.
It's like, whatever. Like, I had this one, even the other day, I had him in the armbar, and I was back, and he wasn't tapping, and he wasn't able to roll out of it, so I just let go.
Clearly, your elbow cannot go anymore.
Yeah. I can't wait to really learn the escapes from that armbar, though, because I don't know, I was talking to somebody, and that's what I used when I went to overtime at the competition.
Gotcha.
I took the arm instead of the back.
You went for the spider web.
Yeah, because I knew I just knew if I just grab it and I just pull with everything I have,
you were gonna outpower them and crank that arm out.
Yeah, exactly.
Nice.
But it even happened to me when we were training and we were getting ready. One of the blue belts, female blue belt. I was legitimately trying as hard as I could to keep it locked in, and she got my arm back. And I remember she told me, she said, "Oh, I've been working on that for a long time." I'm like, "Geez, you almost ripped my arm off." Like, that was crazy. But I was talking to, I think it was Josh I might have been talking to, and he said, "Yeah, white belts just don't have that many options to get out of that position."
Correct.
But how many other options are there really? I mean, I think maybe flexibility plays a big role if you can rotate your hips around to get those knees.
The first thing you want to do, which is what I learned, is try to get to your knees. Right? So in spiderweb, if they're not hooking that arm, that near side leg, just try to switch your hips as much as you can. Get on your knees, get on top of them and start stacking them. Right? And you could start pushing your arm into their chest, and then at one point you pull hard and you get it out.
So if you can't get on your knees, though, you're almost...
I mean, you just have to hold on and wait for them to make their move, and then maybe you'll catch a little window of opportunity to where you can corkscrew out, or you can just pull it out.
That corkscrew seems so risky.
That one's like when the arm's already almost at full extension. Yeah. That's when you try that, or the hitchhiker skip.
That seems so risky. And what I used to do was I would try to, if I had somebody's arm, I would try to travel up the arm because I felt like I had more leverage.
Absolutely,
there.
Yeah. It's levers.
Absolutely. But what I noticed though, when people were doing it to me, and I was trying to defend against that position, if they pulled directly into it was almost like a bicep,
the elbow pit.
It was almost what's it called, a bicep?
Like a bicep slicer.
Yeah, that's what it felt like. Like it hurt
your bicep
for me to keep my arm closed. And then that's what I did. I figured if I pull as hard as I can into the bend of their arm,
the elbow pit,
it's gonna hurt.
I mean, and some people are bonier than others. You have more lean tissue on you, so maybe that smashing of your bicep is gonna definitely affect that.
And I always find it interesting in class too when like let's say for example you've been practicing a technique for a long time and it works right against most people. Some people it doesn't work on, and then you learn it's one little thing that you were doing differently.
Absolutely.
And by making that little adjustment, it's like, oh my gosh.
Like me, even at my level, like every single time I take a class, for example, with Gabe Tuttle from 10th Planet Mission Gorge, every single class that he teaches, there's like a tiny detail that he sprinkles in, and it's like a game changer for me because I've been doing it for a long time, and it's those small details. Like I said, that curve, right? Once you're almost flatline, it's like the tiniest adjustments that you're really focusing against.
That makes sense. That's kind of how it is with dog training for me. I mean, I feel like if there was a belt level in dog training, I would consider myself a black belt. And gotcha. I did this online program. It's called Forrest Mickey's Healer's Toolbox, friend of mine. And it's all about Focus Heal, the entire thing. And he gifted me the series.
Focused Heal.
Focus Heal. So Focus
Heal's when they get to your side, right?
Focus Heal, it's for competitive obedience. The dog is walking next to you in perfect heel position. And as they walk, they maintain contact on your eyes. So they look at you the entire time. So some dogs will even prance and they look at you. So it's an entire series on just developing the focus heel. And I went through it. I mean, it's a lot of good information. A lot of it I already knew. But the things that I didn't know added so much value. It's like the little piece, like I would watch an hour and I would get maybe 2 minutes of something new, but those 2 minutes were super
it's all
valuable.
you needed. Yes.
It's like, oh shit.
Yes.
That's amazing. I'm going to add that to it. How many aha moments have you had in jiu-jitsu?
Dude, every day I get them. Like I see somebody doing something different. You know, even with like PJ, his game is very wrestling based. So we're doing a lot of stuff that I never really did. When I started, I was taught to. I would literally I would jump into guard.
You like jumping into guard?
Yeah, that's what I was used to doing because 10 Planet is, you know, heavy mission control based. So I would jump into guard. We would fall onto my back and then immediately start working rubber guard. But we never really focused on singles and the Russians and arm drags and double leg takedowns. It was never really wrestling based. And now that I'm over here, these guys are really tough at wrestling, so I have to match it. I have to.
How does the wrestling impact your game?
It's tremendous.
No, I mean, how does it impact? Like, so when you start to go, like, if you're rolling with PJ, for example,
gotcha.
Right? How would his level of advanced wrestling impact your defense or even your offense within the match? Because people say it all the time. I mean, you know, you listen to, I'm a huge fan of Joe Rogan, and when he talks about it, he often talks about the power that these wrestlers have and how they're able to dictate the position. So he's like, if you can control what position you're in, you control the match.
Absolutely, and it's always going to be position before submission. So a lot of these dudes, like I said, when I would start, because there's different types of game, right? I could play the game where I'm just going to sit down into guard and I'm going to let you come at me, right? Which is, I guess you could see it as more of a defensive tactic versus the wrestler is actively going for the takedown and actively advancing and attacking. So I haven't grappled against PJ, unfortunately, but some of the other wrestlers, you know, they're relentless. So it's taught me, like, hell no, like instead of me pulling guard now, now I'm gonna go on the attack.
What are they doing that's making it hard? Are they using a lot of their weight?
It's just the pressure, dude. The constant pressure. It's the pressure.
So they're adding pressure as far as weight or
attacks.
As
like relentless attack nonstop. Like they're not gonna sit back and then just let you come at them. Like they're gonna push you and push you and push you and push you. So now I'm getting into the habit of, it doesn't matter how exhausted I am. Like once we reset, I get back up fast and then I immediately go on the attack again. Like I don't give them a break to like even try to think about breathing or catching a break or maybe I'm gonna push them a little bit. And it's happened to where I'm going against these bigger dudes who could definitely throw me across the room if they just push back with the, you know, harder than I'm pushing them, but they're fatigued, they're tired, and I'm just moving faster and quicker, and I'm getting up on my feet, and I'm just attacking more, and now I'm seeing myself being in more of a pressure passing game versus me sitting down and letting them come at me, which is normally what I would resolve to when I was exhausted or I was dead or I was fatigued.
So you need a lot of cardio. Cardio plays a big role.
It's an endurance sport. You asked me earlier, like, what can you start doing to get better faster? There's a few things you can do. One of them is going to be mobility. So you need to open up your hips.
Stretching.
Yeah, so get against the wall, get into that butterfly stretch, and push your knees down into the ground.
Yeah, I was watching a video with Eddie Bravo, founder of 10th Planet, and he's sitting there, he's talking about stretching, he's talking about flexibility, mobility, and he's sitting there and he says, if you're not able to push your knees down to the ground, you're not getting a black belt from me. The second I heard that, I was like, oh, I got to start pushing my knees.
It's critical, especially rubber guard. You have to have loose hips. So push your knees down, right? Exhale, do like the yoga stuff. Every time you exhale, you push a little bit further. And then after that, you go into the glute stretch, where you bring your leg over, like across your other knee, and you just pull on your leg and it'll stretch your glute out. And then go into the pigeon stretch. So hip mobility is huge. Another one, the endurance, you're just going to develop it through long rounds, right? You don't have to go crazy intense. Just go at a steady pace and go 10-minute rounds.
Certain workouts, I mean, you're a certified personal trainer, right?
Correct.
So, are there certain types of workouts that you would possibly think about or even put together that might be specifically designed for the endurance that's needed for jiu-jitsu? So maybe, I don't know, circuit training or supersets, or would it be something like just running uphill? What do you? I mean, maybe I'm sure each person's gonna vary. You know, there's always
there's different aspects. You have for example strength, And then you have endurance. You have cardiovascular system. So you need to train those, independently, but you need to progress them at the same time. So somebody who's never lifted before, right? This happens to a lot of guys that get into jiu-jitsu. They've never lifted. They've been in a couple sports, but they're not very familiar with the squat and the deadlift or the front squat. So go on YouTube, look at a few videos on how to do a proper squat, get a buddy, go to the local gym, and just start squatting and deadlifting. Right? Get those reps in. That's just gonna increase your strength gains dramatically just with those 2 lifts. Right? That's
a whole body workout.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. The dose response you get from those 2 exercises is incredible. You're going to develop a lot of lean tissue.
Do you like dumbbell deadlifts, or do you prefer straight
Absolutely,
bar?
Absolutely. And it's just a variation of the deadlift. Some people can do a straight bar deadlift, right? If you can't stand and touch your toes without bending your knees, you shouldn't be really focusing on heavy deadlifts. You should be working on mobility and stretching.
When you're doing deadlifts, do you prefer both palms down, or do you one forward, one back?
Double front. Double front.
It's much harder that way, right?
It is harder, and it emphasizes grip strength. And another thing in jiu-jitsu is grip strength.
Especially gi.
Absolutely.
I mean, if you're doing gi.
No,
yeah.
absolutely. But even in regular, right, like wrist control, you have to be able to grab on tight. Anything that's a pulling movement, pull-ups, like anybody that's in jiu-jitsu should be doing pull-ups, and a lot of them.
Get the lats.
Yeah,
sure.
Everything in jiu-jitsu is pulling. In wrestling, I'm pulling you towards me, or I'm pulling me towards you, right? Benching, sure, but again, like, how is what you're doing functional to what you're doing either in sport or fitness?
Yeah, isn't benching one of those things that's a common mistake for white belts as far as trying to push somebody off of them? And then what they're doing is they're exposing their arms to all those different arm bars and locks and whatever else that's available.
There's a few movements that warrant that movement, such as you're in lockdown and you're gonna whoop up to go to the side and go for maybe an old school sweep. That's important. Your pressing musculature has to be good, right? But just in general, you should be able to do 3 push-ups at tempo, so with a 3-second negative. Right, if you can't do that, you need to work on pushing movements. You need to have a baseline as an athlete, right? And that's just gonna help you maximally express different areas. So, anybody that's an athlete should be able to squat their weight, right? They should be able to deadlift their body weight, and you should be able to do 3 pull-ups with a 3-second negative and 3 push-ups with a 3-second negative. So that shows that you have good postural control and you can control your body weight against resistance. Right, that's just general, right? And then you have prerequisite, what is it called? Ranges of motion. So, like I said, you should be able to touch your toes, right? If you're laying down, you should be able to lift one leg straight past the other leg's knee.
What is that new class that they're doing at 10 Planet on Saturday morning at 10 a.m.? It's like
functional range conditioning.
That
Amazing.
was no joke.
So you've taken it. I haven't taken it before.
It is
I need to take
hard.
it. Is it really?
Yeah.
What was hard about it?
I consider myself pretty fit, pretty decently fit.
No, this is different.
And no, it was an ass kicker. Every little thing. Well, it's just the holding the positions. And so, for example, one of the exercises that stand out in my mind is you kind of do the splits almost as far as you can, right? Okay. You open it up a little bit, and then you lift one of the legs and hold it.
Nice.
And it sounds simple, but the fact that you're trying to stretch and hold that position, so it's developing the strength and the stretching, I think, at the same time. You know,
it's considered. It's like what I'm thinking is it's active stretching.
Oh, it's killer.
You have static stretching where you like hold like the hurdler stretch and you're pulling your toes, like you're reaching for your toes and you're pulling as like 30 seconds.
It was harder than yoga.
Really?
Because I've done yoga is harder than what people think.
Oh,
and I've
absolutely.
done some intense yoga classes, and this thing was so hard. Like there were certain exercises I couldn't wait for it to be over because I was in so much pain trying to hold it or trying to go through the reps. Crazy. You know, and that makes me think about something too. Something I've noticed. A huge difference from white belts in comparison to the higher belts, even blue belt, is the ability for the higher belt guys to be able to use their legs as well as their arms.
It's an extra limb.
It's so hard though. 100%. I mean, how long did it take you to get to the point? Because I'm still working on it, trying to be able to use my legs. Using them at the same time. Because what happens with me is I'll be so focused on, let's say, trying to get a triangle choke with my arms. What is that, body triangle?
Yeah.
Right?
Or arm triangle.
Arm triangle, yeah. So I'll be trying to get an arm triangle, and then I lose focus on my legs. I'm so focused on my upper body. But then I see some of these higher belt guys while they're working their arms, their legs are like
pummeling their knee on belly. Yeah, absolutely.
They don't stop. It's like the legs have a mind of their own.
It's because the body's a complete unit. You need to work the top at the same as the bottom, and your legs are the strongest part. You know, you get squeezed. I can have somebody in guard, and I could just squeeze really tight, and like you will tap some like people out with that.
I think that's what happened with my ribs. Someone put me in a body triangle with their legs and
dude,
locked in and cinched, and
yeah, no, that sucks.
It could have been an impact too, falling, but I know one time somebody got me in that, and man, that hurt.
The body lock hurts.
It's called body lock.
Yeah, when they had got like a figure 4 around your waist.
The triangle lock or whatever. Yeah.
No, it's gnarly. Dude, it's just close your legs and see the space you have in there. And now imagine somebody's waist around that and everything's smashing in there.
Yeah, and then when you bring your leg down, it kind of closes that space.
When you hide it behind their leg, I can't do it on everybody. It's got to be a smaller guy.
Yeah, I was trying to watch because I've been really trying. I used to get the triangle choke on so many people in the Marine Corps, but I haven't been able to get the triangle choke on like anybody at 10th Planet. But one of the things that I would do is I never locked in, so I never did that lock. Right, I would just hook my ankles.
The triangle, like the triangle from guard.
Right.
Okay.
I would just lock my ankles. And squeeze with everything that I had.
Yeah, that's just setting you up for the triangle, right? So like I learned it as wrestling scissors. So you're just like, you're just locking your ankles and you're just using that as a positional, just in a position to start setting up the triangle. And then after that, you can either pull your shin down to break their posture, pull their head down, but you need to get their arm across their chest or across their face. And
it's hard to fit even somebody who's bulkier. Right, it's harder to get somebody who's bulkier in that triangle.
Angles. It's all angles.
So I was watching a bunch of videos on it because I'm really trying to figure it out. And I noticed this one guy was trying to explain because he has I forget his name, but he's a black belt and he has shorter legs. He's a shorter guy.
Got you.
And he was able to put triangles on bigger guys, and he would turn his body almost entirely at a
perpendicular to their absolutely.
Getting that over, but then another thing that he did was instead of going around the top of the shoulder, he would lock it in right here, so more on the tricep area, and he would take the shoulder out, but that would still keep it in tight enough, and he would prevent the elbow from coming out. And I could be explaining this wrong, but he was like, by doing that, all this extra muscle is no longer in your lock, and you're able to get much tighter by squeezing in here. So he would turn his entire body around. And then the way that he moves, so I tried it, but my mechanics just aren't good enough, and people slip out before I even lock in.
I mean, because that kind of sounds like a setup for an arm bar, right? Because with the arm bar, you throw your leg over the shoulder, so you're isolating the shoulder because you don't want him to get out. And then eventually you hook the leg, right? Deep hook that arm, and then you swing your other leg around, and then you finish the arm bar from there.
Yeah.
But we'll practice it. Like we'll get those details down.
One thing that was an aha moment for me, something I've always gotten onto people, but it was a technique we learned I learned about maybe 3 weeks ago, something like that, where you grab the person's wrist. So if I was behind the person or on the side, and I grab their wrist with my right arm.
I'm like turtling, or am I in side control or what?
Like side control. I'm still working on all the terminology, but I grab the wrist and I pull it in. I'd kind of choke them with their own wrist. But then just simply bringing your arm over their head and then transitioning into the arm bar. Do you know what I'm talking about? So if the head's right here and I have their arm and I have it locked in like this.
So I'm like this.
Yeah. And I bring it over the head, swing my leg around.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I never knew about that. And
absolutely.
When I learned that, I was like, oh my gosh, how many arm bar opportunities have I missed just by not knowing that one little detail?
No, yeah. I think you know what you're talking about, where you could grab.
I'm really bad at explaining.
Yeah, don't worry.
I just don't know the
the way that I'm used to think of it, I'm in mount, right? So I'm on top of you, and then let's say I'm able to bring your arm all the way across your face like that, and then I reach behind your head, and then I grab your wrist, right? So you're gonna end up like this, right?
Exactly.
With my arm around you, because from there, what I would do is I'd go for a figure 4, and then I would do what is it called? I pretty much just like base up on my leg, and then I fall to my side, and now I get your back. Right? Have they used that to get your back before?
Yeah, they should.
Okay, so I know the position that you're talking about.
What's your go-to move for somebody your size, and what's your go-to move if you're grappling someone bigger like Joey? Do you have certain like go-tos?
Yeah, I have my game, right? So as you progress, right? So like the white belt is all survival. The blue belt starts to defend now, right? Now they're not just surviving, now they're defending, and they're able to start playing around with different positions. And then, I don't know, the purple belt now has like, okay, these are like the tools that I have available. My body does really good with this, and that. And then you start to tailor your game to your mechanical advantages. And then the brown belt just literally is just using those tools and imposing his will on everybody else. And then black belt is just obviously mastery. But I definitely have my game, right? Everybody else, as you'll see, everybody has different games. But for me, is like I've worked a lot of my butterfly sweep, so I'll go a lot into butterfly sweep. I'll pass a guard. I'll try to look for the far side arm bar. So if I'm in side control, I want your arm right on the farthest side, because I could either go into a Kimura from there, which is my plan A, always Kimura. So I throw my leg over your head.
You like the Kimura?
Inverted triangle. Like I'll get an inverted triangle, and then I'll go for the Kimura while I have you in an inverted triangle. And if that's not working, then I'll swing my hips all the way around for armbar. Or I like to play twister side control a lot. And I like to isolate one of the legs, and then I'll throw the other leg over, and then I'll scoop the head and go for a mounted triangle.
That's cool.
But that's what I've practiced forever. You know, those are some of the cool things that I learned that I did well. Right, my I'm not too short and I'm not too tall, so I could play with a little bit of everything. Fortunately. I do pretty good with triangles. I just need I've been doing a lot of lifting, so my legs have gotten a little bit bigger, so I need to work better with my angles. But it doesn't matter if you're smaller or bigger than me. That's probably what I'm going to go for.
Oh yeah. And what do you think are the most common mistakes, though, that somebody who is just getting into jiu-jitsu, so our white belts, what have you seen are some of the most common white belt mistakes and some of the best ways new guys can combat those mistakes, or to just be aware of them? One that comes to my mind, because I've done it hundreds of times and I've been choked out because of this mistake, trying to pass somebody's guard and putting one arm in and one arm out.
Also, they get you in a triangle.
Yeah. And that's happened to me a lot, because I'll try to push down and they'll kick that leg up faster than I'm able to adjust or block, right? And then I'm placed into a triangle.
So, what I can tell you, because if you're in guard, you need to open the guard, right? And a lot of the times you have to bait. You have to make it seem like you're doing this on purpose, right? So that they go for that move, and it's just your clock against theirs, so you just have to beat them to the move. And that's what jiu-jitsu is a lot of the time, is I'm just one step ahead of you. So I'm gonna bait here the same. If somebody's mounted and I can't get them off me, and I'm bridging hard, and I'm trying to switch and maybe catch an escape from Alcatraz, or if I'm trying to hook one of your legs and get out and I can't, I'm just gonna start releasing my arms a little bit, right? Start giving you the idea that you're gonna go for an arm bar, and as soon as you go for it, I get on my knees and then I stack. What I was telling you earlier,
setting up a trap in a sense.
It's just a bait. I'm just baiting you.
What are some other white belt mistakes? I think we both have a tendency to go into one thing, and then that just leads us into something else.
It's because the mistakes are going to advance your game. You know, I can't really tell anybody, like, try not to make mistakes. No, like, try to make as many mistakes as possible. Well, this is actually a good one. A lot of white belts don't want to go for anything, right? Let's say they get a positional advantage. Let's say they're a mount, and then they're like, I don't know what to do from here. Just go for something. Just move, play with your body. Go to north-south, go to side control, go to knee on belly, go to three-quarter guard, go to quarter guard, go to half guard, right? Go for things. A lot of guys, they get stuck there and they don't want to move. They don't want to try anything because they're afraid that they're going to lose the position. Lose the position, who cares? Go for as many things. Make as many mistakes as possible.
Yeah, during training, if you get submitted, oh well, you just go back into it.
And then when you compete, all you're doing is you're just doing what you do in training and competition. You don't go for anything that you've never tried, right? Like a perfect example is, like, you remember I think it was the Super Bowl with the Patriots when Odell Beckham made that crazy one-handed catch. Do you remember that one? It was like the poster catch of, like, the year.
Right.
It was like a crazy long pass, and he jumped in, caught it with, like, one hand while the defensive guy's, like, all over him, and it was like the craziest catch ever. And everybody's like, dude, like, how do you do that? And you see that and you're like, dude, that was like the craziest thing. But they showed a replay of him before the game, and he was practicing that same catch. So he didn't do anything that he had never tried. He had already been practicing that same catch.
So not being afraid to try different things, Even if it's going to put you in a position
Absolutely.
just try it.
Yes.
Just move. Just feel your body out. And
exactly.
And really get comfortable with being in different positions. And even being put in, I think that's a good point too, is being comfortable being in positions where you could get submitted.
You need to be, especially in jiu-jitsu, you need to get comfortable being uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Because guys are going to do certain things, and it's going to make you really uncomfortable, and you have to be able to keep it together. Because the more that you start, like, and you could tell, like, I'll get a guy in side control, and it's really tight, and I'm just trying to frustrate him, and I'm doing that on purpose. Like, I'm just literally holding the position, and he's going crazy, swinging all over the place, and I'm just holding it as long as I can until he calms down, and I could hear his frustration sometimes. They'll like grunting, like and you could tell that they're just frustrated trying to get out. I'm just gonna lock down tighter because you're losing it up here. And in those moments of just craziness, that's where I make my move, and then eventually, now before you know it, you're in a triangle or you're in a guillotine.
Well, that's something that a higher belt person is able to do, as far as knowing a position and knowing when to use strength and when not to use strength.
Correct.
Right? Because I've noticed that with some of the guys that are just starting out. Like, I mean, I am a white belt, right? But I'm not a brand new white belt. You know what I mean? Because I have the background in the Marine Corps. I trained at Hey Diago's, which is a really great school up in LA. So I have some foundation, and I have a little bit better of an idea of when to use my strength and when not to. But I still end up using more strength than what I probably want to. And I've noticed that with higher belt guys, gi or no gi. You know, it's like there's this one guy who was one of the instructors at Hey Diago, and he would always come down and he would roll with all the students and work with the students, feel them out, help them with their sweeps and their maneuvers, and just like the guys at 10th Planet. I mean, really great dude. And I noticed with him, he always had everyone basically would say that this guy had like Superman grip. But I would watch him, and he would read the person that he's grappling with, and of course he's going to know his own movements. So if you watched his hands, it would only grip when it needed to. But he would hold the gi the whole time, but it would be a loose grip. And he would know exactly when he needs
when to apply pressure and when to apply tension.
Yeah, but it seemed like when you were grappling up against him,
he was always holding it as strong as possible. Yeah,
that's what it felt. And it was such a mind fuck almost, because you're trying to get out of positions and you just feel. And every time you move, your movement almost made it tighter. You know what I mean? Like that's what it'd feel like going up against this guy. And he was a black belt, so he wouldn't be. He would teach.
Yeah.
He would teach. I mean, he was great. But yeah, noticing or knowing when to use the energy and when not to.
Absolutely.
And I've been trying, every time that we train, I always try to stay in there, especially when it's the open mat or when it's time to roll or whatever, to always roll, no matter how tired you are.
No, dude. Another thing that I could tell the white belts not to do not sit out. Right? I see that a lot, and I see that everywhere. There's people, like, they're tired, and they're just going to sit and just going to watch. Dude, don't watch shit. Like, go home and watch YouTube if you want to watch shit, right? Before you go to bed, that's when you're watching all those videos of Marcelo. That's when you watch. When you're in class, that's when you want to roll. That's when you want to get the reps in. Because when you're in bed, guess what? You can't just get up and start grappling with somebody. But take advantage. If you have an hour, use that hour and grapple with as many people as possible. If you're injured, well, dude, let's practice this. Hey, I've been wanting to practice this. Like you with your ribs. Hey, dude, the same thing happened with me for 7 weeks, right? I was out for a while. Hey, like, let's go 30%. Or, hey, you know what? Like, let's go at it, but just FYI, this side of my wrist is kind of messed up. Just don't go for, like, a knee on belly or a body lock. And people will be cool with that.
Yeah, and I like doing those rounds, too, where we are grappling at a higher level of intensity, but even the ones where it's the low intensity. I was doing one of Ronnie's classes, and he had us start out, and he said 10%, just move around, get that feel.
Thinking about jiu-jitsu, yeah,
and that was such a cool experience of just moving at that level. So we weren't worried about a tendency that I have an issue with, which you may do it as well because you're more of a built guy. You have some more muscle than a lot of other people that do jiu-jitsu. Some of the guys are skinnier, right? Yeah. They just focus on jiu-jitsu and they don't do any bodybuilding type workouts. And I used to want to be a bodybuilder, so I really put a lot into trying to get built up. Not as big as I once was, right? Yeah. But I have to mentally focus on not using the strength all the time, right? Because I don't want to fall. I mean, if I need to fall back on that, if it's a competition, great, right? But trying to focus on, okay, I want to do the technique and I don't want to rely just on muscle.
Correct.
Right? I want to learn how to use my body weight. I want to learn how to take advantage of that to where I'm limiting the amount of energy that I'm using, but I'm still being effective in the movements.
Absolutely.
And that's what I really liked about doing it, because he said 10%. So when we were doing the 10%, I was able to move from one position. He got to a position, right? And we're
You're
going
just
back.
flowing. Yeah, exactly.
It felt so good.
Yes.
It was such a cool little experience. And so there's a lot of value in both. It's funny, I was watching a bunch of jiu-jitsu videos last night, and I came across one with Joe Rogan talking about getting better, and he says a lot of people think that if you want to get better, you always want to go up against the biggest dude. And he said, and that's not always necessarily the case. Now, he's a higher belt. He says what you want to do is you want to choke out the blue belts. Now, I'm a white belt, so the blue belts choke me out. But what he's saying is true. You get good at practicing your technique almost on people who are not as skilled. And he says it sounds like bullying in a sense.
It's not. No, I see where it's coming from. And it's true because, like, who else am I supposed to, like, if I just roll against brown belts and purple belts, they're really good, and if there's something new that I want to learn, it's not going to work on them because they already know what I'm going for. Like, they're already experienced enough. But a white belt and a blue belt, no. But it's cool because they're giving you resistance, but at the same time, you can still practice the technique and get really good at it. So, yeah, I agree with that.
That's why I love rolling with the higher belts, too, when a higher belt is like, Nate, come on, let's roll. I love that, though, because they are so good, and they always give you opportunities as a new belt to try things.
Correct.
I like they intentionally put their arm out. They're like, are you going to take my arm? Here's an opportunity, right? Or they'll turn presenting their back.
Correct.
And I love that because it's like I can do this, but then they can defend against it nicely. So it increases my ability to recognize positions and poor movements that a lower belt player might do while I'm learning and while I'm growing and progressing. But then also, once I'm trying to put the position on them, their defense kicks up a little bit higher. Because they're not just going to give it to you.
Yeah, like I'm practicing my defense too. Like I'm going to let you get side control or the weak positions because I need to practice my defense from the back. Like just in case they ever get my back.
Martial arts, dojo, jiu-jitsu, etiquettes. Right? So for example, certain etiquettes in the gym drives me crazy. Probably drives you crazy.
Like what?
Right? For example, I hate when somebody grabs 50 dumbbells and puts it around their one bench as if they own the gym. I hate when people lean up on the dumbbell rack to do their bend over rows. When somebody puts all their junk on a bench and claiming that it's like, oh, it's my bench. It's like, dude, you're not working on it right now. We can rotate. Let's share. Yeah. There's certain things that just drive me crazy when it comes to gym etiquettes because people are just so.
And I work at a gym, so I know.
Yeah, or they don't wipe down the material, right?
Like leaving the 100-pound dumbbells in the middle of the hallway is the least of like the shitty shit that people do.
It's bad. It's
there's pretty bad.
So many things. Yeah. Well, that one thing, there's got to be certain etiquettes at.
There is.
Like, one, of course, is respecting all the teammates, right? Another one is making sure your feet are clean before coming into the dojo. Correct. Another one is making sure you're not stinky and disgusting. Correct. You know, like, every time I go, if I'm working here all day and I'm working with dogs and my dog training vest, I got to clean. I haven't cleaned it in like a week, you know, because I just put it on to train and I have the food in the pouches, but that thing starts to stink. Yeah. You know what I mean? So every time I go to class, I wash before I go. Because I just don't want to be that stinky dude.
Don't use soap. Just rinse with water.
Why not?
You have a layer over your skin, like a protective film. And when you use soap, you wash that off. And then you're getting into the mats with bacteria. So after grappling, that's when you use soap.
Oh, okay. So defense soap.
Yeah, exactly. So just rinse.
Okay, so for me, these are things I know. Let me know if there's certain things that maybe I'm missing. Is, you know, of course, keeping yourself clean. Correct. Right? Making sure hygiene. You're not...
Nails. Nails is probably one of the biggest ones for dudes.
Keeping the nails short. Toenails as well.
Yes.
A lot of places expect you to bow before entering the dojo, the mat. You know, that respect there. We're having sandals, so you're not walking around barefoot everywhere.
Yeah, that's disgusting.
And now at 10th Planet, they also do Muay Thai and they do boxing. Now, I know more about the Jiu Jitsu, even though I'm still a white belt, than I do of the Muay Thai and the boxing. You know, there's certain things that could be, you know, certain etiquettes that might come into play in those two fields or departments.
I'm trying to think of like other things that like unwritten rules, right, that apply.
Exactly, yeah. So a new guy, you know, like I'm a new guy. I want to go train at 10th Planet Jiu Jitsu. Never been there before. What do I need to go in expecting? Because when somebody goes to a place like that for the first time, they're nervous. I mean,
super intimidated.
My niece, when she went, I was like, "You're rolling today. You know, you're gonna get in there," and she almost had a panic attack. You know, her anxiety was through the roof. Because she's like, "Oh my gosh, I gotta." I'm like, "Relax. Everybody's nice. No one's gonna just." start kicking your ass.
Yeah.
They're gonna let you.
It's an MMA gym, and people have these ideas of what to expect. You're like a cage, and oh my god, like these guys without shirts and sweaty with like crazy ears and blood and just testosterone pouring monsters. It's like not the case at all. It's so funny.
But yeah, everyone there. That's a funny thing too. Is everybody's so friendly,
So
like,
chill.
Andy, for example, even Smalls, right? Tiger Smalls, the older gentleman, right? The guy who's like he worked with Muhammad Ali and everything.
Yeah.
Him and Andy both they both won it at such high levels. They've done amazing things in their careers. What was it, 13 in Bellator that he's won? Andy.
He's 2-2, and so he's a 4-time Bellator veteran. So I believe he's 2-2.
I mean, it's incredible.
But to make it to Bellator is very difficult.
Yeah, and both of them, when I was trying to figure out my raps, I'm like, I don't know how to do it, and they're like, they rapped it for me. I'm like, I'm getting my hands.
Dude, when I started there, I did Muay Thai like very little, theory Muay Thai in 2013, but I rarely get to use raps. So now that I'm here, like we're giving intros to all these kinds of people into boxing and Muay Thai, and I'm expected to wrap them up, and like I had never wrapped hands, so like I had to learn how to do it right. And Chris Bruno, he's like a certified cutman. Like he's gone to like the cutman course. Like he will wrap your hand so fast and so freaking good.
What's that? Cutman, certified cutman.
So whenever there's a sanctioned fight and you go, like there's a certain way that you have to wrap the hands. There's like certain things you can do, and there's somebody from the commission, I believe it's somebody from the commission, looking at the way you're wrapping the hands, and then they have to initial it and sign it off.
No kidding.
Yeah, and then they put the gloves on, and then they wrap the gloves, and then it's got to be wrapped, right, to make sure that nothing funny is happening with the gloves. But he's certified to do that. I've seen him rap, and it's freaking beautiful.
Have you done any MMA fights? I mean,
No.
I've looked up all of PJ stuff. PJ Barch.
The old school stuff.
Dude, I didn't when I first started looking him up. I knew he did jiu-jitsu, but I was so blown away when I saw him fight in the cage. And that dude has like won every single match. Every match. I was like, holy shit. Dude. The only one I saw him lose was the one when it was, I don't know what it's called, but it was the 5 against 5.
The Quintet or Quintet? One of
he
two.
beat the first guy who hadn't been submitted for, 10 years or something like that? Yeah. And then he went on to go against the next guy immediately after.
Yeah, it's
then he was beat. So he's going up against somebody who's fresh.
It's because it's cool because you set the order of the teammates. Okay, who fights first, second, third, fourth, and like who's anchoring.
They pick the order.
And so it's like 5-on-5, and they strategize like who are they gonna pick, and then whoever you get is whoever you get, and it could be a tiny dude like that video of Gio going against that big black dude, and like it could be whoever, and so and it happened like
How did he get the nickname Butter Panther?
So I asked this recently, like, why is it Butter Panther? So, he was a high school wrestler. He was a Division I wrestler, and from what I hear, because I like I said, I haven't grappled against it, which eats me, right? Because it was like one of the coolest things when I started working here. Like I have access to PJ now, but he's recovering. Like he's gonna be back really soon. So a panther, right? Like panthers are like smooth, right? Like they're supple, right? Like the book, like the supple leopard. They move really well. They like move with like grace, and there's just a confidence in everything they do. And then butter because it's just smooth. So the butter panther because it's like he overpowers you, but he does it in a very smooth and like progressive way. Like you can't see that he's like trying to muscle everything out. It's just like a progressive pressure just breaking, just smashing through you. But
do you have a nickname?
I don't.
No?
No. I don't think so. No?
So that's the thing about nicknames. Somebody has to give the nickname to you.
That's absolutely
right?
true.
You're not supposed to. How did you know how? What's it? Boogeyman? Is that his nickname?
Yeah.
Right? How did he get that nickname?
I should know this. I don't know why they call him the Boogeyman. Maybe because he looks like the freaking Boogeyman, and he'll like tear your neck out with his darces. I don't know. But him and his brother are the Freak Bros. I know that Gio's known to
Freak
have...
Bros?
Yeah.
What do you mean?
Like, you know how they use the circus as the logo?
Yeah.
Right? It's because it's part of the Freak Show. So if you go to Mission Gorge, it'll say, when you walk into the mat area, it'll say at the top, welcome to the Freak Show. So they used to be like B-boys, like breakdancers. So they were known to have freak strength. Like I know that Gio is known, like anybody who's grappled against him knows that he has freak strength, like crazy strength, and he's not a very big dude. I haven't grappled against him, so I don't know, but these are the things that I've just heard from the community.
Yeah, I was asking him too. I said, I looked up a bunch of your videos as well. I watched his different matches that he's had, and he's done some in the cage, and they're super impressive to watch. And I asked him if he still did it. And he said, everybody kind of started to realize that I was really good at jiu-jitsu, and it just became Muay Thai fights.
Oh, I see what you're
People
saying.
avoiding the takedowns,
Absolutely.
avoiding, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, I saw him take one.
I didn't know that he had fought in the cage before.
Yeah, he's done a few. I mean, you watch, you're like, holy shit.
Is this Gio or Boogie?
Boogie.
Oh,
I don't think I ever met Gio.
But Boogie, yes. I know that Boogie a long time ago, yeah. But Gio...
That's his brother?
Yeah.
I don't think I've met him.
Yeah.
They look similar?
Well, Boogie's got a beard. Well, both of them have crazy cool beards. Boogie's obviously is bald, but Gio's got hair on him. But I guess they talk... Yeah, their like vocal tonality is almost the same. But Gio's a little bit smaller. Boogie's like big and wide. He's got like a swimmer frame.
He does, yeah.
Yeah, he's huge. His legs are like tree trunks. I remember the first time I grappled against Boogie, I was a purple, and I pulled his leg, and it was like pulling a tree trunk. Like he didn't budge. It was crazy. I was like this is gonna suck. And then he just proceeded to like rip me apart. But Gio's a little bit smaller.
Something
freaks.
Another thing in some of the higher levels, which just made me think about you talking about trying to grab his leg. It seems like in the higher belts, in competition or even in rolling, a lot of times it all seems like a leg game. Meaning, who can put the heel hook in, who could put the knee bar in, who could put whatever other techniques. Why does it seem like it ends up going in that route? Like the lower belts, they're not even allowed to do it in competition, right? Because they don't know it enough.
It's very risky business. When I started the leg game, to be honest, we never touched on it. The tenets of 10th Planet are rubber guard, the truck, the lockdown, the twister. The truck is pretty much like a couple steps before you get the twister, but it's kind of hard to explain. But I'm gonna try to explain like how to set it up. So think of yourself being in the turtle position, and I'm gonna hook one of my legs inside your quad, and I'm gonna reach over and I'm gonna grab your other foot, and I'm gonna pull you onto my back. So I have one leg here, so I'm holding onto, or I could go for the banana split. So I have one leg, and I have your other leg in a lockdown. So you're like that,
like the electric chair. Almost.
Yeah, it's almost the electric chair, but I'm underneath your hips, and you're facing up, and your hips are on top of mine. And so the truck is, I'll grab onto the foot, so your leg your knee it's flexed. I'm just holding you while you're on your back, but I'm underneath you, and I've pretty much got like a lockdown on one leg, and I'm just holding your other leg, in that position, and it creates. I'm pretty much splitting your legs apart, and you can go for the banana split where I escort behind your leg, and I just stretch out my legs, and I'm just pulling your legs apart.
You're talking about the banana split or whatever.
But before that, what led to that?
What led to that was how a lot of the techniques at the higher level, a lot of the competitors, they go for leg attacks. It's a lot of leg attacks. It's defending the leg attacks. Why does it get to that point?
Oh, so like I was saying, when I started, we never really touched on the legs. Like we never really, and then I got into the tenets of 10th Planet, right? The truck, the twister, the lockdown. Are they easier
to get to, or is it because they're harder to defend?
Well,
is it a combination?
I was going to get to that. So the leg game is kind of recent, okay? It hasn't always been so researched. I could really say that one of the guys that was always about the leg game was Dean Lister. You know who Dean Lister is? Mm-hmm. He's a black belt. He's crazy strong. He's one of the head instructors at Victory MMA. And so he had always been about the twister. And so, are you familiar with the Death Squad, the Danaher Death Squad?
No.
So it's a group of guys that train in New York at the Renzo Gracie Academy under John Danaher, who's a Renzo Gracie black belt. And he had an interaction. He talks about this. There's an episode of Joe Rogan. He talks about this, but he was having a conversation with Dean Lister, and Dean Lister's always going for heel hooks and knee bars and ankle locks and that kind of stuff. He's like, well, why are you always going for that? And Dean Lister told him, why would, it's part of the body. Like, why would you ignore the other 50% of the body?
Yeah, that's a good point.
And so since then, it kind of like lit this fire in him, and he's got a degree in philosophy from like Columbia, I think. So he just applied all this crazy, philosophical material to jiu-jitsu, and he investigated the leg lock game like crazy, and he developed a crazy system for leg locks. And his death squad, which was like 3 or 4 guys, were experts at this. And this is where like Gordon Ryan comes in, Gary Tonin, Eddie Cummins, and Nicky Ryan.
They started crushing people.
Yeah,
with
dude. So
leg
they
locks.
exactly. So they brought this to the table, and they just started killing everybody with it. And then EBI, came up, right? The Eddie Bravo Invitational. And those guys started winning multiple EBI championships. So everybody obviously has to adapt to the game. So what's beautiful about this game is that it adapts and it goes in so many different ways.
That's so fascinating.
It's crazy, dude. So now, I remember barely touching leg locks in 2013, 2014. Like, we knew how to get it and how to roll out of it. But we weren't actively going for it because, again, we weren't so experienced. We were, purple and blue and white. We couldn't even go for those moves in tournaments. So, what was the point of going into them? But now these guys brought that to the table. They started destroying everybody.
I love that it's taught even to the white belts at 10th Planet.
Correct. Yeah, it's important, but it's very dangerous because it doesn't take much for your LCL and your MCL and your LCL to suffer an injury. It's not like an armbar where you feel like it's hyperextending, right? I'm externally rotating your heel or internally rotating your heel against your tibia. So I'm literally turning your tibia against your femur. And all those rubber bands, the ligaments that hold the knee together are getting stretched. And I've gotten mine popped a couple times. Fortunately, they weren't tears. But if you hear a pop, that's the ligament stretching. You're creating micro tears in the ligaments.
Yeah, I've had that.
So that game is new. So once these guys started killing everybody, obviously 10th Planet's response was, well, let's figure out. Let's see what they're doing, and then now 10th Planet got on board with it. The honey hole and all these different positions are now a big area of focus, and you see them going, all the time. But you got to be really careful with them.
That's what I love just about competition in general for any sport. It doesn't matter what it is. Competition breeds growth within the sport. For example, I love the sport of French ring. Now, French ring is a protection dog sport. It's man versus dog. You know what I mean? And when you are competing in this sport, the decoy, the man in the bite suit, his job, and if we were to do belt levels for these guys in the bite suit, I'm a white belt in the bite suit, right? Because I watch these guys who've been doing it for 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, and they move in the bite suit the way that you watch a black belt competing up against somebody. It's amazing how they're able to do it. Yeah, it's unbelievable. There's this one guy who... You watch them and you go, oh, I could do that. And you try to do it and the dog kicks your ass, right? So the job, though, of these decoys at the top level, especially ring 3 it's the top level. The dog will be on the field for 45 minutes, no collar, so they can't be corrected, they can't be rewarded, and they have to do everything for 45 minutes. And when they do the attacks up against the decoys, it's the decoy's job to test the dog's will, to push through the fight, to push through the clatter stick, to push through resistance and strikes and all this stuff, right? And one of the events or one of the requirements for the dog at that level is called I believe it's called object guard, and the handler comes out with a basket. He sets the basket down, and the dog has to protect the basket. So the handler will leave, and then the decoy comes in. The decoy's job is to steal the basket from the dog.
What?
Without getting bit. And it's the dog's job to prevent the decoy from taking it, right? There's a lot to it.
What is this called? French
ring.
French ring.
It's amazing. I mean, the guys who compete at the top level,
I'm going to get to this.
So there's a funny video, though, where the dog... So the closer the decoy gets to the basket is when the dog can bite. So if the dog comes off the basket and runs after the decoy, they're going to lose a lot of points because they have to stay next to the basket. And there's this funny video where the dog picks up the basket and walks to the decoy, sets the basket down, and bites him.
No.
Because he knew he had to be with... Right? But anyway, so what some of the decoys started to do at the higher level, because it's a mind game, Can the decoy mind fuck the dog so much to be able to take the basket without being bit? So the decoy will act like he's training. He'll make the dog think it's a training session. And if the dog comes at him, he'll act like oh, you shouldn't bite right now. And the dog's like, oh wait, am I not supposed to bite? Is this right?
So they're trying to mind fuck the dog.
That's what they're
crazy.
doing. Yeah, and the dog has to know and see all these pictures. And what some of the decoys start to do is they start to come at the dog and they would open their hand out. So they would expose their hands to the dog. And they would literally walk the dog off the basket while exposing their open hands. And they would push the dog off, and the dog was like, what the heck? Why are these hands in my face? And it threw the dogs off, and these decoys started taking the basket. Then the trainers had to go, how do we combat this?
And this is a dog that I've never dealt with, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's if you were the decoy coming out. Right? Same thing if you look at Like, look at even competitive jiu-jitsu. Look at the competitions now in comparison to the competitions 20 years ago. It's a totally different beast.
Yeah.
Same thing with dog training, right? Because, of course, I'm a dog trainer, right? You look at French ring now or IPO now or any of these high-level dog sports, look at the top guys now in comparison to 30 years ago. The top guys now are way better.
Which shit on the guys back then.
But that's because of the competition, right? What I was going to say to it, which I found really interesting about the leg locks that you said that is, think about UFC 1. Ken Shamrock was going for, what was he going for, heel hook, or he was going for the...
Was he really?
I think so, because he beat the first guy with it, I believe. And then when he was going up against Royce Gracie knew that was probably going to be the attack. So when he dropped back, like he got into Royce's guard, I believe, and then he went back to go grab his ankle, and Royce just flipped up because he knew he was going to do it. Because he's like, I know this dude's game. He watched it, I'm sure. Or maybe he didn't watch it. He just knew how he was going to move and maneuver, and he got up, and then he ended up submitting him and, of course, winning, right? But, yeah, I mean, you would think that from that first UFC 1 where an ankle lock or heel hook, whichever one it is, I'd have to look it up to know, that it would have been something people would have invested more time in.
And they really did it. And then you started getting these crazy wrestlers who were able to neutralize the jiu-jitsu game and just ground and pound.
Yeah.
And then the jiu-jitsu game started suffering because they, now the wrestlers are neutralizing your game, and now they're beating the shit out of you.
Well, so that's why it's everything. So now when you know jiu-jitsu, you got to start working on your wrestling. You got to work on your Muay Thai. You got to work. It's just evolved. But I mean, that's a good thing though, because if you're training, you're working with people who understand the evolution of the sport and how to teach it effectively. And you enjoy jiu-jitsu. That's why you've been doing it for so long. Correct. I enjoy it. There's no doubt I'm going to get a black belt. It's just a matter of time. How many years is it going to take? Because I'm obsessed with it.
And it shouldn't matter.
Yeah.
Like, people ask me all the time. It's like, dude, who cares? I wasn't thinking. I never would have known that I would have been training for almost a decade when I barely started. And it's so funny because one of my best friends back in El Paso had taken me to a jiu-jitsu academy back in, like, 2005.
Really?
And I tried it, and it was... I just wasn't about it. Like, I was just into other things. I had other priorities, like video games. I was a nerd. I had braces. I had glasses. Like, I just wasn't my thing. And he got into wrestling since middle school. And he would practice the fireman carry on me. And he would on carpet, dude. So he was like beating, kicking my ass in the freaking living room. But I just never got around to it until my cousin brought me back into it back in 2009. And I was just like, how the hell did I not get back into this, back then? So now my buddy who had been training, 5 years prior had 5 years on us. So he's still a freaking monster. He weighs like 135 pounds. He's like 5'5".
Moves like a beast, though.
Yeah, dude, he's a freaking monster. He was a four-time high school wrestling champion.
That's what kind of woke me up, the 135-pound thing. Were you talking about, like a smaller dude? When I first did jiu-jitsu at Hey Diago's, I went against a 135-pound blue belt, and I swear he submitted me like 8 times.
Yeah, dude, it's crazy. It's like, how is this tiny dude able to put so much weight on me? Like, if this is insane.
This is a sport, too. I say this to anybody that I talk to that has kids. I think if you have kids, especially if you have young girls, you should have them do jiu-jitsu. I mean, it's such a good sport because last thing, if I have kids, you better believe they're doing jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, I don't care if they want to or not. They're going to do it because I want them to have that ability to be able to defend themselves. And you think about it, it's all body manipulation. It's ground attacks. It's movements. And how are most women attacked? They're attacked because somebody's trying to rape them.
Exactly.
It's such a terrible thing.
Yeah.
And if your daughter knows jiu-jitsu, right? If she's a black belt, no one's going to come up.
Like, if she sinks a triangle, it doesn't matter how big this dude is. Mm-hmm. And there's different, like the Gracie University or like the Gracies, they have these cool segments where they teach. Like, there's like a girl, like I remember this one where there's this girl demonstrating this move where let's say there's a guy on top of her in the back of a car and she can't get him off. She would reach behind his back, grab the shirt, pull up the shirt all the way up, right? So, like, ride the shirt all the way up, and then grab the collar, right? So, you're grabbing a whole bunch of shirt, right? So, you have a lot of grip from this. And then she would grab the same side, and then loop her forearm around your neck and get you into, like, a collar choke. It was crazy. And, like a girl, it doesn't take a lot of force for a girl to put somebody out. It's just leverage.
And that's what's so amazing about even though we call it a sport, I mean, in the end, if you're in a situation like that, again, eventually I may have kids, but There is no doubt in my mind. So if you're listening to this and you have kids, take your kids down, sign them up for jiu-jitsu.
Have them try a class, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's so valuable, and there are so many. It's as unfortunate as it is. There's so many women who have been attacked, and you think about it. Had these women known jiu-jitsu,
like, who knows what could have happened, right? We can't promise that something would have happened, but a fighting chance is really all you need.
And believe it or not, we are out of time.
Gotcha.
And this has been an awesome conversation, man. The time flew by
so
so fast. Anything you want as far as, let me rephrase that, any information you want to provide to the listeners as far as if they want to reach out to you, if they were going to 10th Planet, maybe some pointers, any final thoughts for the listeners? Or if they want to email you, or if you want to provide your email, anything like that, it's up to you.
I have a personal training business that I'm starting. If you want to follow me on Instagram, it's BJJLifting10P for 10th Planet. I train out of Spring Valley with PJ. We have 4 gyms, so if you're in the area, definitely stop by, check us out.
San Diego area.
San Diego. Take your kids, try out a class, do a trial. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
I had such a good time. Thanks so much for coming out. This conversation was so much fun. I had a blast hanging out and talking with you. And, I'll see you at the gym tomorrow.
Absolutely, dude. Thank you so much for having me.
That's a wrap.